Have you ever heard someone shout out, "Oh my God"? Or sometimes people yell, "Good God Almighty." Well, do you know what God stands for? Today I'm going to be sharing with you something that I bet you've never heard in your whole life. Buckle up. Get ready for a great podcast.
Welcome to Becoming Wiser with Dr. Robert A. Rohm, author and world-renowned public speaker, as he shares stories involving his experiences and lessons learned in a good-spirited, positive, and fun way. Here's Dr. Robert A. Rohm.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Rohm, and today I want to share with you something that really caught me off guard when I first learned it many years ago. I am a person of faith, and I imagine you are as well because you listen to these podcasts. I don't try to wear my religion on my sleeve, so to speak, but I'm not ashamed of the fact that I do believe in God. I believe He exists, He created me, and He has a wonderful plan for my life. I believe that primarily because I've experienced it, but also my good friend Zig Ziglar used to say, God don't make no junk. And the truth of the matter is, if you are alive and you are listening to this podcast, your life has meaning and purpose. I remember many years ago when I was a school principal, I happened to be a principal from 1973 to 1981 of a Christian school. And one day, a local news reporter by the name of Elaine Allman came to visit me, and she asked me if we taught evolution in our school. And I explained to her that we did. We taught different kinds of creation, evolution, the beginning and origins of life, because we wanted our students to be well-informed and well-educated. I went on to explain to her that, I was not at the beginning of creation, so could not definitively tell what happened, although I do believe the biblical account. But then I kind of threw a curve at her, and I said, Elaine, the reason I believe in creation has really nothing to do with science. It has more to do with philosophy. She looked at me and said, what are you talking about? And I said, Elaine, if we tell students, if we tell boys and girls as they're growing up, you are an animal, you are an advanced staged animal, but nevertheless, you are nothing more than a mistake that happened accidentally sometime a long time ago, and you slowly but surely evolved into what you are now. But your life really is just a random set of mistakes or an unusual set of non-related activities that have no meaning and purpose. So I hope you enjoy life and good luck. If you tell a student or a child that growing up, they're going to see themselves a certain way. But then I said, Elaine, if you tell a student, a child growing up, God created you. He has a plan for your life. You are not a mistake. You are valuable. You have meaning and purpose. You are not just a random set of cells that have come together and have no meaning and purpose, but you are unique. Your fingerprints are unique. There's no one who's ever been like you with your exact same DNA. And there's no one who ever will be. You are special, and you have a meaning and purpose in life that you can discover as you get education and as you grow and learn in your daily experiences. I'll never forget, here's a reporter from a local newspaper. She put down her pen and said, I've never heard that in my whole life. She said, that makes so much more sense. Somewhere in the annals of one of my files, I still have that article that came out in the newspaper a few days later where she said, I agree. That was shocking in and of itself for a news reporter to say, I agree with what Principal Robert Rohm shared when I was visiting him the other day, that evolution or creation has more to do with philosophy than it has to do with science. Again, I hope you're listening to this podcast in such a manner is that once you begin to see things and understand things differently, it makes your life have good direction. And that leads us to our topic today. Remember earlier I said sometimes people say the word God? Well, I was privileged and honored enough to have a mentor that taught me many wonderful things. He's gone on to heaven now. He was 85 when he passed away. This current year in which we live in 2023. He was a dear friend of mine. Well, one day we were talking, and he said to me, have you ever heard the acronym of God. In other words, G-O-D. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, do you know what God means? Do you know what God stands for? And I immediately thought about, you mean the God of the Bible, or do you mean God, our Heavenly Father, or God, the creator of the heavens and earth? He said, no. It's much simpler than that. Well, I said, I'm not sure where you're going with this conversation, but it sure is interesting. I said, I guess I don't know the G-O-D, God, that you're talking about. He said, well, you're about to learn because I'm going to tell you. And then he proceeded to share with me what I'm going to share with you. I hope you like this. G-O-D, God, the first step in knowing God stands for good, orderly direction. Isn't that powerful? When you stop and think about, wait a minute, what is God all about? God's about good, orderly direction. He's not about you being random and you not having any meaning and purpose and you not knowing what's going on in life. He's all about you having good, orderly direction. Now, let me share with you a couple of thoughts that show you how this does not work. Have you ever had a friend or someone in your life and they just were, as you looked at them, you thought, man, they're all messed up. They don't make good choices. They don't make good decisions. They just create a lot of problems for themselves and others. Guess why they do that? It's because they don't have good, orderly direction. I read something the other day. I'm looking at it now. It said, you can't fix other people, but you can ruin your own life trying. Now, isn't that powerful when you stop and think about it? You want to ruin your own life? Try to straighten everyone else out. Try to be the kind of person that fixes everyone that they meet. It's not going to work for you, and it's not going to work for anyone else either. It is an impossible situation to try to live your life in not a good, orderly direction, but a random direction of not knowing what you're doing, not having any plans and purposes, not having any goals or dreams in your life, but just like a tumbleweed. Zig used to say everyone is either a meaningful specific or a wandering generality. Every time I hear about a wandering generality, I think about growing up watching cowboy movies, and there would be that tumbleweed blowing through the town that people would look at while they tied up their horses at the horse stable or where they tie the horses up before they walked into the hotel or the saloon. And there would be a tumbleweed going down the street. That's a random generality, a meaningless generality. But a meaningful specific, you're either a wandering generality or a meaningful specific. A meaningful specific, someone has a plan and purpose. They have G-O-D, they have good orderly direction to their life. I know from my own experience of 74 years, when my life has gotten off track, it was because I didn't have good orderly direction. I didn't have any goals or dreams or plans. I was just living life kind of one day at a time. And you know, the truth of the matter is you're not going to ever be able to know everything that's going to happen every day of your life. That's just not the way life works. There are too many surprises. There are too many interruptions. There are too many things that we didn't see coming. How many times have you ever heard someone say, wow, I didn't see that coming? And so I want to give you an idea. So listen carefully. I don't ever want to just talk about things and you think, well, that was interesting. I want you to have some meaningful specifics from this podcast that you can use. I'm going to give you 2 ideas. I'm going to give you 2 projects. I'm going to give you 2 steps that will give your life God, that will give your life good, orderly direction. The first one is your words. What do you talk about? What do you say when you're running your mouth or when I'm running my mouth about things? Do you talk about other people? Do you say things that are embarrassing? Do you say things that if someone heard what you said, their feelings would be hurt? Or maybe your feelings would be hurt? Do you say things, listen, I have a big mouth. I have been a talker my whole life. I was the master of ceremonies at my kindergarten graduation in 54. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the First Methodist Church Kindergarten Graduation Exercise Program. We hope to present to you tonight our amateur efforts of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I still remember my speech. That was 70 years ago. So I've been a talker most of my life. Do you know what I've discovered? A friend of mine told me one time, he said, your tongue cuts a big swath. I didn't know what the word swath meant. He later told me, he said, that's like a combine machine that goes through wheat fields, cutting down acres and acres of wheat with a giant swath or a giant blade, cutting and we in the combine making the wheat ready for harvest. Wow, I don't want to have the kind of mouth that cuts through and destroys and hurts people. Well, guess what I've had to learn? I've had to learn to control my tongue. Probably the hardest thing I have ever learned in my life, harder than Greek or Hebrew or anything else that I took in graduate school, probably the hardest thing I've ever learned in my whole life is to deliberately and specifically keep my mouth shut. You've heard me talk about this on other podcasts. It is an effort for me to say to myself, don't say anything, or if you say anything, make sure it's nice. Make sure that anything that comes out of my mouth, if everybody in the world were listening to it, would I be okay with that? This takes a lot of self-discipline. It takes a lot of self-control. My wife and I were talking the other day about something, and we were we have a friend that complains a lot. So I asked my wife, I said, do I complain? And my sweet wife said to me, you never complain about anything. Now, that really blessed me. I didn't pay her to say that, but she just said that just like, wow, you never complain about anything. That so blessed my heart because that's the kind of person I want to be. I just not going to complain about stuff. We learned from Thumper, if you ever watch the movie Bambi, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say nothing at all. I mean, Thumper was a rabbit in the movie Bambi. So if we can learn what Thumper said, we'll all be a lot better off. Well, I told you there were two things. The first one's your words. Here's the second one. And this is going to surprise you because you're going to think, well, everybody knows that. And I've lived long enough to know that very few people know that. Here's what the second thing. The first thing you can work on is your mouth, your words, your tongue. Here's the second one, your behavior. Your behavior is your actions. Those actions came from your body. Those behaviors came from your body. The way you behave, the way you act. You've heard people say, well, you just need to behave yourself, or you need to act better. What are we saying? We're saying that the way you act as a person, do you use your physical body? What do you do to control it? Do you, and listen, you know where it starts? It starts with your feet. My mentor taught me. He was sharing with me one day. He said, I didn't need to get my eyes and my ears straightened out. I needed to get my feet straightened out because everywhere I went, my feet were taking me. He said, when I stopped going to bad places, bad things stopped happening. Where do your feet take you? Do you go in places that you would be embarrassed if your friends knew you hung out there? Let me ask you, what do your eyes look at? It's so easy. We live in a world where there's so much filth and trash everywhere you look. What do you let your eyes look at? Are you careful not to look at things? I mean, sometimes it flashes in front of us on TV. But do you learn to, I can't look at that. I can't have that on the walls of my mind. What do you listen to? Isn't it amazing? There's really about 4 or 5 major things in your body. Where do your feet take you? What do you watch with your eyes? What do you talk about with your mouth? What do you listen to with your ears? And possibly not only what we see and we hear and we talk about and our feet, but here's one other. What do your hands touch? Where do you let your hands go? Do your hands sometimes go to places where they shouldn't go? Do you have respect for other people? Do you demonstrate an attitude of respect? It's real easy for those 5 areas, what we see, what we talk about, what we hear, where our feet take us and what we touch with our hands. I've discovered that if I can keep those 5 areas having G-O-D, good orderly direction, everything in my life goes great. So that's our podcast for this week. As I wrap it up, I want to review. Take care of yourself. Make sure you have good, orderly direction every day of your life. This is so simple. You want to have a successful life? You want to have a life that's filled with love and joy and peace and patience and happiness and goodness and self-control? Do you want a life that has financial prosperity? Do you want to have good relationships? Well, I've given you the secret today. Have good, orderly direction. Be careful what you talk about. Be careful about your behaviors. It's not rocket science. It's just a daily walk that we have full control over. Think about it. Nobody on this planet controls you more than you do. You get to decide. I know we all have teachers and parents and coaches and police officers and others that we look out for because we want to make sure we're doing things right. But no one will ever be able to control you better than you. That's my goal for this week. I want to have good, orderly direction, and I know you do too. Thanks for listening to our podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Rohm, and I look forward to our next time together. Have a great day. God bless you. Bye-bye.
For more information about this podcast, please visit www.becomingwiserpodcast.com.